All right. Welcome to Live from Studio Venus. I'm joined today by Paul Sparrow-Clarke, who I met up at our university days. Didn't get to chat with you very much there.
On the 7th floor for a little while.
Yeah. So in some of the same meetings, that kind of thing, but
Yes,
you didn't really get to know you.
Unfortunately, those meetings.
I know. So you're not at the university anymore.
No.
So you've opened your own business.
Freelance. I'm working with a consulting company out of Edmonton that writes market assessments, business plans, grant applications for clients across Alberta and beyond. So
Are you liking it?
it's been going well so far. It's very hectic.
Yeah.
Lots of deadlines, lots of work, but good. People actually appreciate what I do though. So it's good when a client says, "Oh, I'm so glad you did this. Thanks for helping out with this." It's it makes it all worthwhile. So that's been good.
Yeah, it's a different atmosphere, isn't it?
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, doing that kind of work.
Yeah.
So when I thought of you, when I was thinking of you for the podcast, what has always really struck me is your love of movies and books and music and that kind of thing. So how did that come about? Right from when you were young, when did you find movies?
Movies. I've always been into movies ever since I can remember. I started out loving horror genre was the stuff I was really into, and before this is back, you remember these days, is back in the days when to see a film you had to see it on the theater, or you had to turn it up on TV, so there was no availability of films outside of that theater or TV. So in those days, to learn about movies, you read books, right?
Yeah.
So I started out that way with a series of books that talked about horror movies and science fiction films. Those are always interested in, so that really got me into it. So way before I saw any of these films, I knew everything about them. I knew the stars, I knew the directors, I knew the writers, I knew the producers. All of this stuff I knew before I actually finally got around to seeing these films. And now, of course, you can see pretty much anything you want to.
Yeah.
Although the streaming films, I think, leads to a bit of there's a shallowness of content on most streaming services, which is why I still buy physical media. But that's how I got into it, was the interest, reading the books, learning everything about it, and then sort of catching up to that with finally getting to see these films when they finally became available on VHS and then DVD and then Blu-ray and beyond that, right?
So it's not very usual for a young person to read all the books, read who the producers are, to really do that research. Where did that come from? Just your brain?
Just an interest. I mean, and the funny thing is, I've connected with people now who also grew up in the UK during that period, and similarly did very much the same thing. In fact, the first big writing project I was involved in, it was a book project run out of the UK. There's a magazine called We Belong Dead, which is a line from Bride of Frankenstein.
Okay.
We Belong Dead, and he pulls the lever and blows the castle up at the end of the scene of the film. Anyway, so there's a magazine which focuses on the era of classic horror, which they define as being the silent era up until about the 1970s or 80s. And so Eric McNaughton, the guy who does the magazine, he proposed a book project, and the first book was called 70s Monster Memories, and it was all about exactly my experience, which is growing up in the 70s during that time and getting into these kind of things, but it covered books, movies, TV series, and just everything, every piece of pop culture or whatever was covered in the book. And so I discovered that a lot of people went through the same thing and had the same experiences, got into the same movies, got into the same TV series, got into the same books. So there's a lot of us out there. And that's one of the great things with the internet, of course, is you connect with people who have those same interests that you never would have met up with otherwise, right?
Right. And you've sort of passed it on for the next people. You're a very prolific writer for books and movies and that kind of thing. Are you still?
I'm still, I mean, I wouldn't say I'm prolific, but
no?
In fact, I wish there was a way to monetize it, because I'd like to quit my day job and start doing all this full time. Unfortunately, there isn't. I'm currently, there's a new book project coming out same magazine, We Belong Dead Publications, is doing this book called Giant Monsters of Filmland. I got one piece in there. And I just submitted 3 more essays for the next book project after that, which is called Masters of Terror, for which I did 3 pieces. One is Karl Freund, a German cinematographer. The other is, I'm trying to remember, I do so many now that I lose track. Karl Freund, Ray Harryhausen, the stop motion effects artist. And the third one was Jack Arnold, who was a director in the 50s that did a lot of the key monster movies like Creature from the Black Lagoon and stuff like that. So that's in process. Then after that, there's another book project done with the same guy who's using his time wisely with the COVID pandemic to pump out these books.
Right.
And the next deadline is Spotlight in Science Fiction, which covers key science fiction films. And I've got 3 pieces in that. Don't ask me what they are because I just started working on one, which is James Cameron's Aliens, and there's a couple more. I can't remember which ones they are, but I've got them all noted in my project management software, so to keep me on track. But it's hard to fit this in between day job and other responsibilities. But
yeah. So we should mention you're from Wales, right?
Yes.
And when did you come over?
1981.
81. So you would have been how old?
15.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And how was that? Were you happy to come over?
No.
Because at 15,
No.
right? Like that's
exactly.
that's a real sort of space. Like that's a
Yeah.
really big move for a 15-year-old.
Yeah, no, for sure. I mean, culture shock I've found consists mainly in the little details, and it's the details you don't even think about, because even though Canada's English speaking and it's very much the same in many, many ways, it's the little differences that accumulate. And the one I always remember is getting on the bus and getting off the bus, because in Wales, in fact all across the UK at the time, the rear doors of the bus opened automatically.
Right. Yeah.
And here, they didn't. So you're standing there like an idiot, waiting for the doors to open, and you have to. You have to push it.
Yeah, you
or
have to do. I forget what it is too. Yeah.
But it's the accumulation of small stuff like that, which I think adds up to culture shock rather than big differences. Even though I can't imagine the experience that somebody coming here from, say, South America or whatever would have. I mean, it must be just completely overwhelming because even I had found it a little bit overwhelming initially. So.
It's funny because when you say that, for a lot of immigrants coming in, language is usually what we think of.
Yeah.
But that sort of shows that definitely there's a lot more other things that within that culture that
No, for sure.
So when you came here, did you find your people? Did you find people like-minded? And you're in high school.
Not in high school. A little bit in university, and I got some friends at university that I stayed in touch with long term, and we used to hang out and go to movies all the time. But so a little bit, but it really took off on the internet, where your borders have suddenly expanded.
Yeah.
All of a sudden, even though Facebook in some ways is evil,
I know.
I have to give it credit because I connected with a lot of people I wouldn't have connected with otherwise, including that fellow that I mentioned that does the book publications and the magazines, and also a couple of people in Chicago, of all places, that were into the James Bond films, which is another passion of mine.
Yeah.
And I guested on a podcast that a guy called Frank Mingarelli runs, where he's gone and he's covered every single film from the beginning of the series, and I think he's still going.
I listened to a couple of them actually.
So
I listened to you.
So that was a lot of fun. So it was really the internet which expanded it and then brought in people who had the same interests.
So with James Bond, which, like you say, is another passion, and one of the things that I noticed because of evil Facebook, I tried to go on Facebook for a couple of months. Well, I did go on Facebook for a couple of months, and I found I really did not feel as connected. And maybe it's especially because of COVID, but I'm not the type of person that sort of out and about a lot anyway.
Yeah.
And so that is kind of a social way for me.
It's the same for me too.
Yeah, so I end up coming back.
Yeah.
But I don't know, and Instagram's lovely that way too. You just get these little snippets that you're not really, it's so so much more subtle, I think.
Yeah.
Sometimes, not necessarily all the time. So James Bond, did you approach it the same way you did all your horror films, by reading and researching?
Yeah, I mean, it was, that took a long time to come about because I'd seen the films on television here and there, and I liked them, but it was really the books that got me into it more. When you discover the novels, you realize that it's quite different to a lot of the films. And and that sort of connected me with the little snippets of the characterization that they would put into some of the early films, and then it was brought back in here and there with when Timothy Dalton, the Welsh actor, by the way, that took over the role in '87, only did 2 films. He brought it back, and he injected quite consciously the character from the pages of the novel into the films. So reading the books really got me into it more.
He wasn't that, not accepted isn't the right word, but he's not a lot of the favorites.
Yeah, no, I think you'll find he's quite well regarded amongst hardcore fans, people who have read the books, but but among the general public, I would say he's probably dead last.
Yeah.
Which is a shame. I think certainly with the Daniel Craig films, where they've gone back to injecting more of the character into the stories.
Yeah.
I think some people have gone back and reevaluated Timothy Dalton and said, oh, well, look, because that's, in some cases, that's the seeds of where they've taken the series now, lie in those 2 films that he did, right?
Mm-hmm. I have a sister named Tracy that's named after James Bond's wife, Tracy. Yeah. I have a sister who's
thankfully hasn't met the same fate as
No, not yet. She's all good. And I have another sister named Sarah after Bob Dylan's song, and I was always really choked that I didn't get any cool name out of her.
Yeah, there we go.
But so what are you doing now? Well, it sounds like you're still sort of writing in the horror genre and that kind of thing.
Yeah, still continue with that as much as I can. When I was employed at the university, I used to host film screenings for there used to be called the New Media Film Series, and then they rebranded it. I think it's I can't remember what it's called now. Maybe just the U of L Film Series. I don't know. But so that unfortunately is off the table. But I used to enjoy doing a couple of those screenings every year. Yeah. But of course, I'm not running now anyway because of the pandemic. But, yeah. But no, I'm going to keep looking for opportunities to write about this kind of stuff. I also write, you probably know, the Diabolique magazine. Mm-hmm. It's online. I do stuff for them occasionally. I just got a free disc in the mail the other day.
Oh, nice!
They must like, this one company must like what I do, so I didn't even ask for this, and they just gave, so that's great, it's a free disc, but now I got to write a review of it.
But it's kind of cool to get to that point, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, where people are. The one thing that really I noted about you is that you don't seem to take things in passively. So whatever it is, you seem to, I don't know, is that a right description? But it seems to me everything sort of takes a passionate, whether you're talking about your music or.
Yeah. Well, for film writing, it's a different approach if you know that you're gonna have to write about it.
Yeah.
You're watching it with different eyes. I always look at it. I always catch little things anyways, probably more than the average person does. But if you know you have to write about something, then you're looking at it with a slightly more, critical is the wrong word. I hate the word critic because it implies that you're tearing stuff down, and I really don't like doing that.
Yeah.
But
But yeah,
exactly. Lost my train of thought.
That's okay. That'll happen. It happens to me a lot. So who are, say, your favorite writers right now, would you say? Is that like one of those?
Not writers of movies, but writers of books?
Or do you find this, I find this sometimes, and I'm trying to get away from it, that that you only end up reading books that you are, writing about and that sort of thing? Or do you find that, are you someone who?
Or I mean, books is a little bit different because I don't actually write about books.
Right.
Right. So that's just purely for pleasure. So I mean, I have favorite authors, but I tend to just dabble widely. Like I just look at stuff and someone will recommend something. Oh, I'll go. Oh, this looks interesting. And I'll just. I mean, there was some post the other day that somebody put up. I think it was on Facebook or somewhere where it was like, read what you want to read. You know, don't read something because somebody says it's good for you or you think you should because it was on a top 10 list and it won some sort of literary prize.
Yeah.
I think, you know, read whatever the hell you want to read. So I just, as a result, I read just about anything.
Yeah.
I mean, I grew up reading Stephen King, which, and I went away from Stephen King. And
why is that if you're
because
into...
I didn't like, there was a couple of novels I didn't really get into.
Yeah.
And ironically, it was the novel It, which everybody loves.
Yeah.
Which was
the
like,
one that
I was
kinda...
a mixed bag.
Yeah.
And then there was another one, the Dark Half, I think, which I didn't really enjoy, and I kind of just fell away from it.
Yeah.
And then, but I came back to him in the past couple of years and reread a few of the earlier novels and thought, oh yeah, these are still really good. And then I caught up with some of his later stuff and I thought, yeah, he's still got some good stuff.
Yeah.
So Stephen King has always been a favorite. I love Harlan Ellison, who's written in various genres but always gets pigeonholed as a science fiction writer, but he's a very potent, kind of almost angry and very confrontational, and but really sharp sense of humor too. His stuff is really good. And I being into horror stuff, I always loved the classic stuff like Emma James, who's the classic writer of English ghost stories. H.P. Lovecraft, which of course I know most people will know Lovecraft. Yeah. In spite of some of the horribly racist stuff that underlies some of his work.
Oh, is that right?
Yeah, and so those would be some of my favorites. But as I say, I just read widely and read whatever the hell interests me.
Yeah.
Which is, I think.
Which, like you say, is definitely what's important. I know growing up, we were huge readers. And I'd read like the cereal box. Like I can't just sort of sit and not be able to read at the same time. Not very often anyway.
Yeah. I do occasionally read film books as well. I mean, it's not my favorite thing to do, but once in a while I will read something that's quite interesting. I just finished a book on Christopher Nolan films called The Nolan Variations, which is quite interesting and made me immediately want to see every single one of his films all over again. Yeah. But, for me, it's a mix of fiction and non-fiction. Yeah. I like histories too. I'm interested in science, but that's part of my problem in a sense. It's both a strength and a weakness. Is I like so much stuff that I'm all over the map. A little bit of history, a little bit of science, a little bit of fiction, a little bit of
I can't see anything wrong with that.
Yeah, well, I mean I agree. I'm with you on that one.
Just makes you richer and richer. Yeah. And sometimes a novel that you won't think really affects you can influence your next reading of a novel.
I think it's important not to close yourself off to different experiences, and I think, which reminds me of when I first started doing that film series that I mentioned. Mm-hmm. The very first film I hosted was a film called The Orphanage. It's a Spanish movie, and it's a ghost story, right? Mm-hmm. And it's mostly concentrates on atmosphere. There's one moment that I warned the audience that it will make you jump. You know, and everybody's probably crying, thinking, where's this movie coming in? They jumped, they probably made it scarier for them. But and at the end of that film, it's a very moving film. It's got an amazing central performance by this female actress, and I'm not going to even mention her name because I'll probably just murder the name. But she's amazing in it, and it's got this incredible bittersweet emotional ending. And at the end of the film, somebody came up to me who'd watched it and said, thanks for showing this. I never would have seen this because it's not my type of movie. Yeah. And yet it's a very rich. And I'd say that movie dramatically stands up against any straight drama, Yeah. And so my point is, you should never close yourself off from things, even though it might not be your genre, might not be your type of thing. Just give it a shot, and you never know, you might find your next favorite thing, right?
Well, instead of thinking of this sort of high versus low art, right?
I absolutely agree. I mean, there was this term recently that was thrown around called elevated horror. Oh. And it was meant to put a sheen on the horror film. Like, have you seen the film Get Out? No. Yeah, it's a very good film. Yeah. And but it was the term elevated horror was thrown around by these film critics.
Horror scares me.
But
which I know is the idea.
Yeah. But. Well, partly yes, and partly no. But yeah, But the idea behind elevated horror was, it's horror films, but they're intelligent.
Right.
And I looked at this and thought, well, fuck you. I mean,
Yeah.
horror films have always been intelligent.
Yeah.
You know, they've always been there.
Yeah.
Just because you've chosen not to see it is your problem. So I really don't like. So so to your point about high art versus low art, I don't think there should be any distinction. I think you can find worthwhile messages, worthwhile subtext in pretty much anything.
Yeah.
It's, you know.
And I think it's the same, well, I mean, we are talking about visual art as well, but I think it's definitely the same, I know, as an artist the other way. We're often, especially when you get into the academic world too, then you can kind of find yourself into that low versus high art that I think we have to fight and sort of be able to be open to many more things.
No, I agree 100%. And another film that I showed as part of that same film series was a Swedish vampire film called Let the Right One In. Right? I don't know if you've seen that one.
No,
oh,
I'm writing away.
That's just an amazing film, and the central character. There's two central characters. One is the vampire who appears to be like a little girl who's about 13 or 14 years old.
Yeah.
Of course, frozen in time because she's immortal, and then she befriends this kid who's being bullied at school. And somebody afterwards came up to me and said, you know, that film was really about two lost souls finding each other. I said, yes, that's exactly right.
Yeah.
That's exactly what it was.
Yeah.
If you strip away everything else, that's the core of the film. So again, high art versus low art, no, you can find it anywhere. Well, as long as you keep yourself open to it, right?
Yeah, exactly. Do you miss being able to go to the theater?
Yes. Oh, absolutely. Yeah. Yeah, it's I enjoy, and there's lots of stuff that you can only see at home.
Yeah.
Because, you know, obviously you can't, all these films from the 70s or whatever, there's no way of seeing them other than on disc or the odd times on streaming services. But no, so that aside, the theatrical experience for me will always be the best way to see a movie. Yeah. Absolutely.
Yeah. So do you have like a big TV and sound at home so you can really experience the
not sound. I mean, I have headphones.
Oh, do you listen to a lot with your headphones on?
Yeah, because it gets too loud otherwise. So, and the headphones give you the surround sound.
Well, and the headphones too, though. That's such a, I mean, that oral sort of thing that you have. Yeah. Like having headphones in is just like a completely different experience.
Yeah, it can be more immersive. I mean, I'd rather have an amazing sound system, but I just don't have an amazing sound system. Yeah. So the headphones is a good standby. I mean, I just have a fairly big TV, but I recently upgraded to 4K, which you can actually notice a difference on for older films. Not so much newer films because, and I did some reading on this actually, and it's because more modern films have digital effects in them, and the digital effects are actually remastered at 2K only. So when you're watching in 4K, there's not much of a difference because it has everything is digitally has a slightly low resolution anyway. But for older films, which are actually on photochemical film, there's a ton of detail in film which a 4K disc will capture. So if you're watching something like 2001: A Space Odyssey on a 4K disc, it looks absolutely amazing. Because it's pulling out more of the vivid color. The vivid colors from the physical film, right?
Is that right? Hey? Yeah. And so 4K television, sorry to be so daft, but I don't really know what 4K means.
It's 4K, it's just, I think it just simply means that something is scanned at 4,000 lines of resolution.
So but it's a television. It's a
exactly, yes.
Okay.
to watch in 4K, you need a 4K player, a 4K TV, and a 4K disc. Got those three things. You're watching in 4K, and then so the basic principle is that you're boosting lines of resolution. So DVD, I think, I kind of stretch back here. I think DVD, I think, is something like 480 lines of resolution. Blu-ray is 1280 lines of resolution, 1260, something like that. Okay. So that's a boost, and then 4K is 2160 lines of resolution. So each one is a step up in terms of the amount of detail that you're seeing on the screen. So that's the basics. That's
why when I go into the, where they sell televisions, they all look amazing. Yeah. And mine at home looks like crap. So it's the whole... Yeah.
And I'm not a techie guy, but that's the big... all I want to know is Is it going to look better?
Yeah.
And the answer is yes. So,
Yeah. And you had mentioned at the beginning that you like the physical copies of things. So does that mean when you're buying music, you're not just streaming it, you're buying the physical albums or discs or?
Yeah, music's a little bit different. And I've moved more towards streaming, Apple Music and such, because it's on my phone, it plays in the car. But yeah, for films, definitely physical media.
Yeah.
And partly because of this just sheer shallowness of the catalog on most streaming services.
Yeah.
I mean, somebody did a graphic at one time where you look at something on Netflix, and the number of films from 2016, then it goes down, and as you get past about 2000, it goes, and there's barely anything from before then. So it's
what do you think of all these other streaming? I mean, so you're sort of mentioning that a lot of these streaming things are so low in having, well, I'm going to say quality movies, classical movies, that kind of thing. What do you think? There sort of seems to be where it's coming out with more streaming. Do you think we're going to get, I guess maybe we might get something that's streaming older movies? I haven't seen anything like that yet. But.
Yeah, I mean, there's options. I mean, I don't subscribe to it, but there's the Criterion channel.
Okay.
It's the Criterion Collection. It started out with Laserdiscs way back in the day, and I used to buy Laserdiscs, so I'm one of those guys. But
and did you keep it? Like, do you have all your stuff, or are you getting rid of it?
I don't have a player anymore. I still have the Laserdisc somewhere, but I'm in DVD and Blu-ray. It's actually far better quality now. But back in the days, Criterion Collection it's essentially it's a collection of foreign and important art films and stuff. And that's how it started out, and then it went into DVD and Blu-ray. So the Criterion channel is based on the Criterion Collection. It's the same sort of vision, is to present important and significant films from around the world. I don't subscribe to it, but so that's one option. Amazon Prime actually is not too bad. Talking about evil corporations.
I know.
Amazon as well. I
know, it's so hard.
I know. I did sign up for Amazon Prime, and it was actually to access certain series. But I did discover that they have a few older titles in horror genre.
Yeah.
The 70s and such. I mean, not much, but there is stuff there. I think the problem now is that there's too much choice. Yeah. Because I mean, I'm with Crave, Netflix, and Amazon Prime. There's still stuff that I can't access. But I'm thinking I'm not signing up for one more service, you know.
I know.
But I don't think.
Have you gotten rid of regular cable yet?
Yeah, I haven't watched regular cable for years.
Well, I haven't. I don't know that I've watched it, but it's there.
Still
There's so many, like some of the movies and different things that you can have.
Yeah.
You can only have those channels if you have the whole thing.
Yeah.
So, but
exactly.
It seems like there's so many streaming that might be the way to go, and just get rid of full cable.
Yeah, for sure. But for physical media, for films, there's a number of, it stayed alive, and there's a number of boutique labels now which are putting out stuff, old cult, really obscure stuff in these amazing editions. Criterion Collection was the original one, but now there's like Shout Factory is one. There's Arrow Video from the UK, and now putting out stuff in Canada, and they've recently gone to 4K. There's a number of them that, down to really small labels like, well, what's one of them called? Vinegar Syndrome, I think, that puts out these films that you've heard of them.
Yeah.
Maybe, but they do amazing work, and this is stuff that's never gonna ever turn up on streaming. So your only choice, if you're really into these movies and really into finding older cult movies, is to still buy physical media. Mm-hmm. That's the only way you'll get these films.
Yeah. And are there, there's sort of, I know for albums, right? There's different like sort of festivals or selling places or where people are trading and that sort of thing. Is there the same kind of thing for sort of the older movies, especially now that we have, that we have online and that sort of thing, so you have an accessibility to trade and get things? And is that something that people do with the classic movies?
I must admit, I don't know. I mean, I'm just not in that sort of realm. I know if you want to get really specialized, I mean, people still, there's people that trade in physical copies. I mean, actual film reels.
Right.
They'll actually trade back and forth. I used to know somebody who's into it and was trading copies of these, but I've never owned a projector. So, I mean, there probably is. I think there are festivals and things where things like that where people will trade these things, but I do it all online.
Yeah.
I subscribe to, again, the Facebook pages of all these small labels, and they will announce films that are coming out, and so that'll cue me to go and order one. But I'm living in Lethbridge, of course, we don't really get these kind of things. I mean, they happen in places like London.
Yeah, I'll bet.
The big places, right?
Yeah, yeah. Have you ever thought of moving back to Wales?
Yes, actually.
Yeah?
Yeah. It might happen, yeah.
Yeah?
Yeah, we'll see how it goes.
Did your parents stay here?
No, they're back.
They're back there.
They've been back there since
little brats, so they brought you here and then they went back?
Yeah, took off. Back in 95. So
oh, okay.
I'm back there for a while now.
Yeah.
Which gives me a good excuse to go back.
It does, yeah.
I go back once every year and a half or so. Of course, it's been a while now since the pandemic.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, for sure. Well, it'd be kind of cool because then you are closer to London and those sort of things to try and have access to that, right?
Yeah, well, I've looked in envy with these festivals that people post about. Oh, I'm here and I met this amazing star, and I got my photo taken with so and so who starred in this movie from 1960, and I'm like, wow, that's great.
Well, because I know in Berlin too, they have all kinds of really cool things going on there, right? Different festivals, that kind of thing. So just much more access than we have here. But you're starting it, right? I mean, you did that with having the film nights and that kind of thing. So making sure that some of that culture does come back to those for people like me that don't know anything about it. Yeah. Yeah. Who do you like for music? Or is that all over the place too?
That's pretty much that's all over the place too. Yeah. No. My favorite band has always been U2 since the 1980s. I mean, I've always loved their music, but honestly, I dabble in everything. I mean, jazz to blues. I love classic blues. I mean, classic blues was the stuff that kept me going through university. That and alternative rock music kept me going through university. There was a bar on White. It's still there actually on White Avenue. It was called the Blues on White Pub. It used to be called the Commercial. I don't know if it's still called the Commercial anymore, but it was known back then. It's a bit gentrified now, but it was back then. It was a bikers hangout. Yeah. But and students would hang out. So you got this weird mix of students and bikers hanging at this bar.
King Eddie was kind of like that in Calgary. Did you go to King Eddie?
I think it's I've heard about it. I think it sounds like the same thing.
Yeah.
But they used to bring in these blues bands, these touring bands from Chicago and Texas and all these places, and it was just awesome. Like it was really good music. So classic blues has always stuck with me, and that led me to digging deeper into the blues, and Robert Johnson, and then Muddy Waters and Willie Dixon, all that classic stuff I got into, because that is the birthplace of everything we see now in popular music. You can all be traced back to that time. Right. And so blues, jazz, I'm in classical, I'm in just about everything. Yeah. I'm a little bit of film soundtracks, obviously. Yeah. But I dabble in pretty much anything. Anything's fair game. Really.
And that's I believe that's how we should be, right? Then
I agree.
You're open to more and instead of staying in our little shelves. But that's why it's sort of really nice that we do have the internet and that sort of thing now, because there's a lot of music that I never would have heard of otherwise. Either my friends aren't playing it or whatever. So it's one of the great things. And I think if we're always open to what we may hear or what's going or that kind of thing.
And I think there's a role on the internet too for people who are, for want of a better term, curators. Yeah. Like who will, so if you think, oh, I'm like the jazz band, I don't really know. And there's somebody out there will put together a list of the keywords, or if you're interested in this, then talk about this. Here's the 10 things you should listen to. So that's what the internet is really good for. Yeah. Is people will act as curators of certain things, right? And it'll give people a way into things that they otherwise go, well, I don't have a clue what to listen to here, right?
Yeah. No, it is one. And for myself, who doesn't know a ton, I grew up like with Dylan and Neil Young and all that. That was my dad's music, so it kind of came. So there's a lot. I mean, he listened to blues and that kind of thing, so definitely I got some of that. But a lot of the music, when I want to learn something new, that's where I'm going to try and give me that core that I can start, and then I can research and find out what else. talk about music, we can't really go by without James Bond and having those. Their you know, their sort of main soundtrack is.
Yeah.
They have Billy. Have you seen the latest James Bond movie? Is it even?
It hasn't come out.
I was going to say
it was delayed. It was April 2020 was the original release date. That got bumped to November, and that got bumped to April 2021.
Right.
And
I
will lay money on it being delayed again till the fall. So it's going to be.
Do you think they'll wait for theaters? Is that why they're waiting?
Yeah, I think they're going to wait for theaters for that one. I mean, the rumors were that they were talking to Apple or somebody to stream it, but I think they're holding out for theater, which will be awesome. I mean,
yeah,
I'm of two minds on that one. I mean, I've been waiting so long to see this damn thing that part of me would say, "Oh God, for God's sake, just release an Apple TV. I'll even buy an Apple TV device to hook up to my TV just so I can watch it."
Yeah.
But on the flip side, part of me thinks that I want to see it in a theater. I'll wait for another 6 months.
Yeah.
So, but anyway.
That's how I feel too. Well, I was just saying because Billie Eilish's song came out, and I thought it was great. I thought she did. I loved it. I thought she did like a fabulous job. It had that real classic. Her and her brother, I guess, had such a classic James Bond, you know, feel to it. Because some of them got. I mean, I think Madonna did one, right?
Oh yeah.
Did you too? You too?
No, but Bono and the Edge wrote the song "Goldeneye," which Tina Turner sang, which I thought was a great track. I mean, it's one of my favorite of the more recent ones.
Yeah.
But I thought Billie Eilish did a great job, and I'm not even a Billie Eilish fan. I really know nothing about her. But I thought they did a fantastic job, and of course Hans Zimmer, who's quite well known for his soundtracks,
of course,
worked on that track as well. In addition to, were you a fan of the Smiths?
Yeah,
back then, Johnny Marr, the guitarist, works with Hans Zimmer, and he did guitar on that Billie Eilish track.
Oh,
and I guess
really?
the whole soundtrack. Oh, nobody's heard the whole soundtrack. Yeah, of course. But so if you listen to that song again at the very end, where there's a guitar twang, that's Johnny Marr playing. He said in an interview, I finally got to play that classic Bondian, guitar twang at the end of that song. So
that must be what sort of captured me too. So sometimes we know something sounds like something or sounds right, but we're not sure why, and that's probably why it has such a classic feel too, right?
Yeah.
Especially if Hans Zimmer was a part of that too. So and you never got dabbling into like the other arts, painting or?
No, I mean I can't really draw, so.
Oh, I can't either. Thank God that's not the requirement for doing art.
I did. But the only other thing I ever got into was for a brief time I jammed with a bunch of guys up in Edmonton. We had a garage band going, and that was it.
Yeah.
The one claim to fame for when I was playing with them was one of our songs got played one time on Radio Hay River at about midnight. So.
Tuned into those.
There we go.
Yeah. Well, it was cool to talk to you. It was nice to learn a little bit more about you, and I would love if you would give us maybe some links to some of these things that we've been talking about, so that I can put that on the podcast, because you've given us such a wealth of information and recommendations. I'll put those too, some different recommendations of good things to follow up. So it'd be nice.
Yeah, no worries.
All right.
It's been a pleasure.